Okay, without any further ado, welcome everyone, and thank you for having me today. Thank you for the organizer and the organization for this spectacular event. So I'm going to talk to you about the Executive Action Team and MetaScrum, and I don't want to get you annoyed about myself, so I just will give you a brief introduction and introduce it in the slides, one slide talking about me. I work as Agile Enterprise Coach, now almost 20 years of experience with Agile. I was one of the early adopters in Italy. I worked for many organizations in different countries, and now I work for Scrum Inc. Scrum Inc. is the company founded by the co-author of Scrum, Dr. Jeff Sutherland, and his son, J.J. Sutherland. And also founder of Facilitate Thinking, which is a company specialized in training in Europe with the IC Agile and Scaled Agile framework. So I work with Agile, and I want to talk to you today about how we can introduce a natural, organic way of scaling which is more effective than traditional enterprise frameworks. So let's start with these pie charts and talk about how successful might be Agile. Agile, compared to traditional waterfall process, and forgive me if I use acronyms or definitions that, because lack of time, that will be not possible to give you a clear explanation of all acronyms, but I'm happy to catch up with you later on. Agile, the successing rate, it's much higher than traditional project, but as you can see in the pie chart, we still have failing rate and we still have challenging situations, almost the same. Why this happens, why we have problems, and when I'm talking to you about these problems, I'm not talking to you because Agile is not perfect. Agile, it's a great idea, don't get me wrong. But what we are facing right now is that this concept, and there are many ways to describe Agile, from the manifesto, principles and values, mindset, and the application of enterprise frameworks. But what Agile makes possible is to shift the mindset from a traditional competency and skills focused approach, which was related to the problem-solving ways of approaching systems and complexity, to a more team-working level and ways of solving issues, believing that yes, competencies and skills are important, but we need to face complexity working as a team. And this diagram highlights the concept of a team, maybe the Scrum teams with Scrum Master and Product Owner, which works perfectly, don't get me wrong, but works very well, and it improves compared to a traditional skills consultant mindset approach when we have particularly an independent path to production. So this means that we have a team that is responsible to design work on your concept, whatever you are doing, services or real products, directly to production. And maybe you have a couple of teams that are doing this. But when the things becomes more and more complex and the complexity rise exponentially, we face that still we have the same issues and problems that we already had before with traditional project management or program management. So Agile is an improvement, it's a huge improvement, but we need to find something else. And the reason why we have cross-team dependencies is because the complexity rises exponentially, as I said. And what happens as a consequence of this, we have a reduction in volume, speed, quality, and this most often comes along with the duplication of work and communication overhead. So which is almost unavoidable. We cannot skip these kind of issues. And we tried to cope with this issue, introducing the concept of enterprise agile frameworks. And one of these enterprise agile frameworks that I'm going to show you now is the scaled agile framework. It's a popular framework. Is a framework that can really change the way how you can organize and do agile at the scale, but still have a lot of issues. Sorry, but I have to do something with my presentation because for some reason the slides didn't come through, and this is not what I expected. So Let me try to do something. Yeah, now it should be fine. You can see now the schema of a scaled agile framework. You can find all the documentation online. Don't get me wrong, is an impressive framework. Can really change the way how you do scale and agile at scale. But there are a couple of issues related to the things that I was talking about, cross dependencies. Well, the first issue that we have with this framework is that impediments are tackled at the planning level. There is a PI planning, every 4 or 5 sprints, quarterly planning, where you tackle dependencies and all teams are aligned around these dependencies. However, the framework does not tell you, apart from the regular meetings that different teams hold, like the Scrum of Scrums, how they manage dependencies with the organizations. It doesn't tell you anything about how managers, leaders do, what kind of effort they can put in with the and the pace that they have to put in actions in practice in order to help you. And the framework is unfortunately stressed the importance of leadership, but without saying how you have to do that. Another issue that we have, there is no clear accountability now at the scale. And this is an important concept that I want to tell you today, because when we talk about accountability at scale, we often make the mistake that we think about, oh, that is the role, product management. So I exactly know what is the accountability for that role and which layer I'm talking about. The answer is no, and I'll explain you why. If you have, in a perfect world, you have a role, a department, and everything works fine. You don't have to cope with uncertainty and complexity, and it's not a VUCA scenario. It's fine. But in a way, in a world where you have to upscale or downscale and move fast, very fast, you probably might need some new role that works at that specific level without being constrained by a specific label or role. So having, first of all, the product management might not be necessary in some company. Some company might not be well acquainted with the concept of product management, but might probably see, oh, okay, we need a senior level of product ownership. However, roles and responsibility now are different in SAFe because they are tackling this responsibility at different layers. On top of this, there is a huge difficult and an issue with the scaled agile framework is when you go up and you go at the solution level higher than the program level, now you describe this role as a manager, but more related to the solution, not related to the way how you manage the dependencies and the way how you tackle dependencies. And sometimes, and the problem is the framework, by the time it moves out from the team level and the train level, which is this huge corporation where team works together, does not describe really how to tackle dependencies. We have the pre-planning session, but it's once every quarter. Come on, what happens every day? So let's move forward, because as I was saying, again, we have definitely the idea that scaling accountabilities is important, but we need to understand how. And the concept that I want to introduce you today is the one that we use in Scrumming, which relies on the concept that Scrum of Scrums, so the idea of working as a team, is not an event that you put in practice to make more teams working together effectively. It's more the idea of having a team of teams. So the idea of having a nucleus that grows up and scales up or down, depending on the complexity of your organizations, but must do this organically, not forced by layers that you introduce, like the scaled agile framework. So if we consider that a Scrum of Scrums is a team of teams, and in the picture that you can see now on the slides, we have 5 teams. Each single team has a product owner and a Scrum Master highlighted with different colors. And there is an acronym SOS, which means Scrum of Scrums. The idea that they communicate together, but how they communicate together at the scale. And the picture that you can see right now is a picture that you can see 2 different team of teams that are working together aligned by what we call the scale daily scrum. And the scale daily scrum happens inside each single nucleus. Now, interestingly, the scale daily scrum is the way how they communicate and the scaling up or down. and reducing the communication path instead of increasing communication path. I'll explain why. Inside one nucleus, we have 5 teams, and they meet each other on a daily basis with a scale daily scrum, and one component per each team comes along to meet up and then solve dependencies that they can solve at a team level. But by the time they have to meet up with the other nucleus of team, other 5 teams, they do not come all together. They just, one person at the least from one nucleus comes together to meet up and solve dependencies at the scale, reducing the communication path instead of increasing the communication path. Now, what you do, you can imagine that this is a very organic pattern of Scrum teams that can scale infinitely up. And in fact, what you can see in the slides, aside from the funny picture, which seems like a flower, in reality, it's exactly what you have done with many organizations in the world. You can group Scrum of Scrums, team of teams that are communicating organically and then solving impediment at scale, simply collaborating with this mechanism that does not increase the number of the path of communication, the communication path, by the time you scale up, and faster and gradually can remove the communication path by the time you downscale. Now, one thing is missing though, is the concept of EAT, the executive action team. Now here, no matter how big is your organization, no matter how many Scrums, a team of teams you have, you must have an executive action team, which is a Scrum team again, but with people that comes from specific area in departments. Now, legal departments, HR, might be from the executive areas or top management. And there are people that are responsible and capable of removing impediments that are not removable at the team level. Now, because you have these departments and areas and people fixed in your organizations, it does not change by the time you increase in complexity of number of people or teams. And that is another example of how organic is this way of scaling, because the executive action team will be put in place if you have 5 teams, if you have 10 teams, or if you have a complex scenario like this one that is explained in the picture. Now, if you want to see how this is really a real case scenario or case studies, please go to the Scrum Inc. website, because you will find a lot of case studies with many companies in the world, from the United States to Europe, that are using this schema to scale up gradually and naturally. And I want to tell you one more thing, because this is the example how we scale and remove impediments naturally and gradually around the executive action team. But what happens when we have to talk about the product? We have to talk about how to build our product. What I was saying about SAFe, that in SAFe we have a specific role at the team level, which is the product owner, and then we have a coordinator or a product management level at the program level. And finally, a product management, a solution management level at solution level or value stream level. But these 3 roles might be very different to each other. And in case you need to move from 5 teams to 20 teams, you do not actually clarify how product owner can scale up. You clarify only that it will be a product management on top of the product owners. While instead, and this is the difference of Scrum at scale, you have the same mechanism that you adopt for the Scrum Master cycle, and so the executive action team, you have the product owner that scale ups to the chief product owner, that scale ups to the chief product owner. And the pattern is exactly the same. It doesn't change. Now, naturally, what happens is that you can coordinate with the same mechanism you are familiar with, because you've already done on a daily basis with your Scrum Masters and your leaders. And now you do exactly the same in what we call the Meta Scrum. The Meta Scrum is called the Meta Scrum because Meta describes, of course, the Scrum and describe the purpose of what you do. So the product or the services you are focused on. Naturally, as you can see in the small picture to the right, we have exactly the same mechanism that we have with the Scrum Master cycle. So let me first highlight this picture, which represents the, I can probably go a little bit with the higher rate now to make it more clear. And this picture represents the Scrum at scale with two major cycles. The framework is built around these two major cycles. And the cycle on the left is the Scrum Master cycle, where we put in practice what we call the Scrum of Scrums, or the scaled daily Scrum mechanism, when you scale up and then you meet up to remove impediments and tackle impediments or problems at the scale, and together with executive action team. On the right side, you have the product owner cycle, which is focused on the what, not the how. And then in this case, it scales up with the same mechanism. So we have product owners, we have chief product owner, and we have chief product owner. Together, they create a very simple organic way for scaling. And the funny things, I haven't talked to you anything about the knowledge of the framework that you probably, if you are familiar with SAFe, you probably have to spend weeks, if not months, to understand how a framework like SAFe is built. And the reason why this framework is so complicated is because there are a lot of definitions inside and requires for sure a lot of effort. But here, I haven't told you anything about the complexity of the framework itself, because the two cycles are very organic and very simple to understand and represents a natural way for scaling. So you can apply, in the end, Scrum at scale on top of SAFe if you want, solving the issue that I told you about the accountability at scale. And you can redefine the concept of product ownership in order to work more effectively and being able to scale faster and simpler. And I would say that I have done with the presentation, because I'm more keen to answer your question, actually. If you have any question or anything that you can, and I would love to come back to some concept in case, of course, you need any clarification or you need more information about Scrum at scale and the role of the executive action team on the Meta Scrum. Is there any question? Or you can put on the chat or just turn up and then interact with me right now.
So, question for you, Michelangelo. So, based on your experience,
Okay.
what is the best ceremony, the most important ceremony that we need to do in a Scrum team? So, there is a lot of ceremonies, but what is for you, for your experience, the best one, or the most, I would say, that giving added value to the team and to the products?
That's very, very interesting question. Thank you. And I would say that obviously the short answer is, in a Scrum team, all the ceremony that now are called events, but they are important. However, if we talk about scaling up or down, so downscaling or upscaling, what you cannot miss is the events that makes this possible. And we call it scale daily Scrum. So it's the intent that you have on a daily basis to align with others, and you cannot miss that one. And the scale daily represents the moment where you can really make all elements of the organizations align each other and report immediately to the executive action team what's going on, what's happening. Do we need any help, that we are not able to remove these impediments at the team level? We need some help from others. The fact that if you do not have an executive action team in place with a scale daily Scrum, what happens is that in theory, the leaders should help. However, you don't know how and when, and this becomes not consistent. So this is fundamentally necessary if you work at the scale. At the team level, though, anything is important, really important, but it's not because I believe that this is the most important one, but I want you to have a thought about that. And I'm thinking about the retrospective. Why? Because recently I was working with the chief organizations in the military organizations, and we were talking about implementing Scrum at scale and Scrum at the team level, not in the software industry. And what we noticed is that if the feedback loop is not in place, so which means that you talked about Scrum, you introduced the mechanism and the feedback and the methods, but there is no feedback in place, which means that there is not that retrospective cycle where the client, the teams are moving back and then reflecting on what happened, does not make possible any improvements, because in human nature, the improvements is possible only if you understand your mistakes. So the feedback loop is essential and vital to survive. All the other events that you have, I want to catch up on a daily basis, I want to catch up every 2 days. If you think carefully, you can adapt those events, because the important thing is aligning using the concept of time box from Toyota. We realized great thing. It's very useful. However, you can adapt the time box, you can adapt the length of the system. So I'm not saying that it's not important, but it's flexible. What is necessary though that you can't skip is the feedback loop. So retrospective cycle definitely is one thing that I observed sometimes in teams. Oh, let's skip that one because we don't have time. We want to go in production, right? So the question is, what have you learned then? For how can you improve next time?
Next question, Michelangelo. So you're thinking about that you are in front of you an IT manager. IT manager needs to work in a portfolio perspective. There is a lot of projects, no? And they have to select the best one or what to start first and the second one. And the team behind work in Agile. What to do in this case? So this is probably you have to implement something in safe, or what is the IT manager the best way to work?
A fantastic question, thank you, because you can do both actually, and that's the point why you do not have lean towards safe or towards Scrum at scale. It doesn't really matter, because Scaled Agile Framework has an incredible way to understand the concept of portfolio management, understanding the concept of flow, understanding how you can work with capacity and the feasibility and viability. The important thing is how you connect that portfolio management with the teams. And that is the moment where you probably have to organically approach to the portfolio level with a layer of product ownership, which is able to scale in the right way to reach that level organically. Because if you don't think that the communication is smooth and happens with ease, that's the problem. You define a phase that is perfect, portfolio, and you define a Scrum team which is perfect, but the way how you communicate is not. So I will encourage you to think that it's fine adopting safe, it's fine adopting all the technique that you have at the portfolio level, but you need absolutely find a way how you can create the meta Scrum. So the way to scale up and down and then merge organically these two layers. So you can do adopting, for instance, Meta Scrum into Safe, if you like, or working with Meta Scrum only and adopting methods at portfolio level.
Thanks a lot, Michelangelo.
You are welcome.
I think we have no more questions from the audience.
Great.
So finish here?
Yeah.
Okay.
You have one?
I just want to say hello to Michelangelo.
Oh, okay.
You can see me. You cannot see me. I'm Pascal. Ciao Michelangelo.
Ciao. Piacere di averti qui, anche se non posso vederti.
Yeah. We will have some chat later again.
Yes, for sure. Well, if you want to be in touch with my the itSMF, just do this, and then I'm happy to provide you all details and information about both Scaled Agile Framework and Scrum at Scale.
Don't worry, Michelangelo, the topic is very, very interesting, and I think we can organize an additional session in this way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And in case you won't, I mean, then we can try to ask Jeff Sutherland to come over and share some experience with the association and the group. I mean, it's something that he does, and if I ask him to come over, we might probably have a great experience of Jeff Sutherland in.
Absolutely. Thanks, Michelangelo.
You're welcome. Have a nice day, everyone.
You too. Bye.
Bye. Cheers.